Selamat sore, terima kasih, moderator. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I hope I'm not going last because my company is the oldest on the panel here.
Still a micro.
But you know, in the spirit of talking about connectivity, you know, one thing that I will be talking about today is actually TV white space technology. This is not a technology that is, I suppose, we found, but this is definitely one of the technology that we're definitely pushing around the world for places, especially rural areas, to get better connectivity for internet access as well. Now, I don't know if many people in the room actually realize, but you know, as the earlier panelists actually said, that connectivity as well as internet is actually fast becoming the necessity of our daily lives. You know, even the UN has gone to the extent that it's actually basic needs for basically the citizens of the world of the day. Now, but before I go ahead to talk about, you know, rural connectivity, you know, maybe I would just like to talk about the changing landscape of the ICT, right? Mobile is definitely an area that is fast becoming the norm of ICT. And when I talk about mobile, this is not limited to mobile devices, but more towards the experience of mobility, right? Now, most people nowadays have more than 2 or 3 gadgets, and definitely we move from one gadget to the other, and we expect to move it seamlessly, right? Apps, as Shinto has pointed out before, is becoming, you know, a daily necessity of our lives as well. I mean, the smartphones that we normally use on a day-to-day basis, they're basically dummy phones, right? If you don't have the apps installed in there. Big data, cloud, and this is the transition where we're going. I mean, basically the data has shown that by 2020, IoT's Internet of Things will actually include 26 billion units, creating large quantities of data, generating more than $300 billion worth of revenue for IoT suppliers. So it is becoming big business for everyone. And all of this can only come through cloud technology, through broadband internet as well. And without any of that, it will be very difficult as well. But, you know, ironically, as it was pointed out before, I mean, the reality is that, you know, considering that we have 7 billion people living on the planet, 40% is still being connected. Now, if you zoom in even further, that 40% is actually still heavily focused in the larger cities, in the developed countries, as well as in developing countries as well. But in the developing countries such as Indonesia, you know, you're basically going to find the connected world mainly situated in places like Jakarta, right? And for companies that are operating in ICT, and I think most companies as well, is that, you know, we play by the economies of scale, right? What we want to talk about here is that not only technology should be accessible, but it should be affordable as well, right? More people using it, the cost would be much cheaper as well. But as actually pointed out here, I don't know if you can actually see it clearly there. The proportion so the bottom left is fixed broadband, you know, broadband where you actually plug in your cable, and you have the mobile broadband as well, or the wireless broadband. Even the wireless broadband, you know, people that are accessing their internet through their handphones, through their smartphones as well, it's still relatively expensive for people that are living in most of the developing countries, such as Indonesia and here in Asia as well. So, what are we saying about wireless connectivity? I mean, we have the issues. I think we have the direction where we want to go. Indonesia, we're lucky to have Indonesia broadband plan, and I think we have the vision, right? But what we're saying here is that I think wireless connectivity at the end of the day, I think it's number one, it should be ubiquitous. We should be able to access it anywhere. Number two, it also should be affordable, right? I mean, what good is technology if it's only given to the selected few? And number three, it should be robust, right? The amount of data that we're churning day in and day out is incredible, the amount of it. If we don't have the back-end infrastructure to actually support all of that, it will be a nightmare for many of these activities as well. So what we're doing at the moment is that how do we actually find new technology that can actually support this growth? And considering that the rapid uptake of technology here in Indonesia, I think we need to look at new methods of accessing the internet as well. So the technology that we're working on with USAID, and we're also piloting here in Indonesia, is what we call TV white spaces. I don't know if many people actually realize. I mean, I have very little time to watch TV anymore, but the TV channels that we're actually watching is actually soon going to be all digitalized, right? So if you look at here, this is the spectrum, the end-to-end spectrum. You have the green one is the unlicensed for the Wi-Fi, and the red one is the licensed to mobile carriers, or the ones that you're using your handphones on. Then you have the purple ones there, right? The purple ones are registered for your TV, the analog TVs that you're watching, the TVRI, the RCTI. A few of the TV channels have actually moved to digital. But what's happening is that most of those TV channels that are on purple is actually going up to the right-hand side of the scale. And what's happening is that those occupied TV channels are becoming white, are actually becoming unused, and are actually becoming available to be accessed, right? Now the question is like, what the hell do we do with that technology? What do we do with that broadband? Now this technology, TV whitespace, it actually allows people or apps developer to actually access it and to use certain type of technology to transmit data. And maybe in short, how this differs than normal Wi-Fi, I suppose. There's some people that we speak to actually classify TV whitespace as super Wi-Fi, right? Relatively speaking, it is probably not as fast as the broadband internet that you get at your house, but it's definitely a lot faster than dial-up, right? What we're targeting for is that we're planning to target about 10 Mbps per household in rural households. So assuming that there are 5 people living in that household, so each person will get about 2 Mbps, per second. And what we're saying is that this technology is definitely travel a lot farther than normal Wi-Fi, right? Because it's using the TV frequency as well. So we're anticipating about 8 kilometers to 10 kilometers on a good day. And one thing that I did not mention here as well is that some countries, and I will go through the examples later on as well, is that super Wi-Fi actually, number one, it uses less energy, and number two, it can travel over long distances on top of water as well. So for countries such as Indonesia, where it is an archipelago, this type of technology would be perfect to actually connect the outer islands of Indonesia as well. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is, I have to keep reminding people that this is not a Microsoft technology per se, but we are supportive of this technology as well. And there are various places where we are, conducting this technology, and we're piloting it. And in some countries as well, in some cities, it's already been running, right? And this varies from countries that are very much developed. I know in the US, as well as in Singapore lately, they've actually just legalized the use of TV whitespace for various activities, but also in continents where access to the internet it's still very rare. Countries such as some countries such as in Africa as well are actually accessing this for education purposes as well. And excuse me here. So I will bring you guys to the closer areas where we're actually conducting TV whitespace. Now, in Singapore, they've actually just recently legalized the uses of TV whitespace or TV spectrum. Now, the interesting thing about Singapore, I mean, who would have thought Singapore would need TV whitespace, right? I mean, they're one of the most advanced countries, they're one of the most connected countries. But in fact, what they have been using for is that they, considering that there's constant increase of bandwidth, frequency of people accessing gadgets, they actually need to expand to it. So that picture there, Gardens by the Bay, so if you go there now, you can actually, the internet that you will be accessing there is free and is actually provided by TV whitespace. Now when they were piloting for Singapore, and what they're still doing it for Singapore, is that because TV white space technology has actually, it's actually very buoyant on top of water. It transmits long distance. So what they've been doing is that they've been using it for ports, right? And this is possibly a great input for Indonesia as well, where we have a strong agenda of strengthening our maritime agenda, that to connect data, to connect internet with ships that are incoming to the port of Singapore, they are transmitting data through using TV white space technology. Thank you. Another example that I like to point out is our neighbor in the Philippines as well. A few years back, they've been very unlucky in the past few years with earthquakes and typhoons as well. Now, during the Typhoon Haiyan in the southern Philippines, a lot of the connectivity were actually shut down, right? They actually collapsed, right? TV white space, the use of this technology actually allowed the government to actually respond quickly, to actually set it up, in a relatively fast time, and then starting to connect them with Manila as well. So there are cases where there are missing family members because of the typhoon. They were all connected through TV white space as well. So the ambassador mentioned earlier what we have been doing here in Indonesia, and I would just like to highlight our Yogyakarta pilot. Right? It's not really in Yogyakarta, but it's actually in a small village, I think about 20 kilometers outside of Yogyakarta, and this is in partnership with Kominfo and as well as USAID. Now we've actually focused on 3 key areas. Now the first area, before we focus on the areas, I think to conduct any pilot project, especially pilot project in ICT, I think there are 2 things that you need to measure. You need to measure the economic impact. Number 2, you need to measure the social impact. Right? To what extent do they actually grow? So for small and medium enterprises, we actually measured this factory. It's called the Al-Barik Chip Factory. So they produce banana chips, right? Prior to that, they're just I suppose just a home shop, producing banana chips. And then we start providing them with TV white space access. They're starting to connect to the internet, and what they found is that they found new partners online. So they actually entered the space of e-commerce, and the result is an increase of revenue from $307 per month to almost $2,000 per month. So it is a significant increase there of economic. For the education as well, what we've been doing is that we're starting to connect a lot of the public schools with TV white space technology. What people don't realize when the activities that teachers do at school, of course they teach, but a certain percentage of it, I think about 30 to 40% of the work that they do after class hours is doing the hard administration work, filling out the details, doing online courses, and everything else that the teacher normally do apart from teaching. And what we do is that by connecting a lot of these, providing TV white space, is that what we found is that the teachers interviewed actually found 55% time savings of tasks. And when you equate this to their salary, it actually works about $128 worth of saving. There's an economical model to calculate that. And then finally as well, what we're doing to provide the health access with for the villagers is that the puskesmas, the health clinics there, what we've noticed is that all of the health clinics here in Indonesia are actually connected with BPJS, is the universal health coverage now. And the problem with connecting to a single point of universal health coverage such as BPJS is that normally connecting to their system and feeding into their system, asking for getting claims back from the system, normally takes days, right? With this, we found that there's a significant decrease of time, of course, and as well as an increase of monthly capitation, as well as patient savings as well. So, what's next for TV white space here in Indonesia? We've completed the TV white space pilot here in Indonesia. I think the biggest
Ruben, excuse me, 1 more minute.
Sure. Okay. So I think we just have to continue partnership with MCIT, and one area that we're exploring is actually in the background there. We're trying to roll it out to see how it actually works in Jakarta outer places. So if you go to the northern side of Jakarta, you have the Thousand Islands. This is actually perfect for testing out TV white space as well. But something that I would just like to leave my presentation with is that I think the government, in the spirit of executing the content of Indonesia Broadband Plan, I think we really need to look at other means of technology as well, right? If I'm not saying that TV white space is the answer for Indonesia to become more connected, but I think this is one of the many ways, right? Of course, you have the internet.org and everything else, and of course, there's mobile penetration as well. So what we're hoping is that the government, as well as with the support of the U.S. government, can look at these new means of technology as well to enhance internet connectedness. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ruben. Give applause to Mr. Ruben. That with Microsoft initiative to push also TV white space to becoming one alternative of internet access, connectivity, it's also becoming an alternative for us to deploy broadband in Indonesia. Now we have 20 minutes for question and answer. First session, I would like to invite 3. Okay, one from the top with the batik one, black batik, and okay, lady second, and Mr. Andi Gobam the third. Okay, please raise your name and what is your question?
Sorry.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kevin. I'm from Bauer Group Asia. I have only one simple question. It's directed to Mr. Ilham. So it's interesting to see that in the council, there's a combination of teams between the government, private sectors, and non-government organizations. My simple question is this. In any developed country in the world, the role of private companies, private sectors are very important. In the recent days of the development of Indonesian broadband plan or Indonesian development in the ICT sector, we've been rather tough with the regulations for companies. I would like to highlight that, again, we cannot develop with the help from private sectors. Now, as the council in which you manage the involvement of private sectors as well as government agencies, how do you manage those conflicting, I would say, interests between the private sector and Indonesian government to further the development of ICT sector in Indonesia? For example, just a quick example, many companies have problems with the recently issued 4G LTE regulation issued by Kominfo. It's definitely going to impact their business, and which means it's going to impact their business decisions to invest more in Indonesia, in which it will limit also their possible donation, their possible involvement in the development of internet access to support economic growth. Thank you.
Thank you. You got the point?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, please.
Thanks for the very good question. First of all, as I mentioned before, our working group is indeed a multi-stakeholder. We do have government people there, we have the private sector, we have communities, and also people from academia. And what you say is basically the current situation is such that many regulations are not necessarily 100% pro-business. There's a lot of problems associated with that. We are not issuing those policies, right? What we can do and what we do is we voice our opinion, we give input to the policymakers. Whether this input is appreciated or not, we cannot make the decision, right? But we can give the input. So any input that is given to us from our members, and there are associations, there's a chamber of commerce, there's some companies directly that are participating in the working group. Is of course we put it all together and we convey that input to the policymakers, but we are not ourselves doing the policy. Right? We are not a ministry, or we are not a department, we are an agency. I would call us maybe sort of like an advisory. We are like an advisory council. So we are a voice that basically can convey opinions to the policymakers, but we are not ourselves making the policies. But I think we collaborate well with government offices because we're government ourselves. But I mean, what is unique about our organization? A big part of our organization is actually not only government, but we have a cross-sectoral participation of many. And through our input, I believe that government will be more adaptive to what other kinds of input they need to be looking at in order to see what kind of policies would be the best in order to push this country and the people and the economy to the next level. I think that's all I can say. We cannot really solve that problem, but we can contribute to solving the problem through voicing it into the right channels, because we are not the decision makers in the end.
Thank you, Pak Ilham. Second question, please.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Maishandia. I'm pursuing Communication Cultural Technology study in Georgetown University this fall. I would like to ask Mr. Denny that technology has helped us to connect more than ever, and then most of the company right now, especially private sector, they're more focused on how to improve the technology. As a result of it, the number of needs for the human capital is also decreasing because the needs of the technology is increased. So how do you respond to this, and what would you advise? And for Pa Ilham, from your slide, pilot project 2014 and 15, I see it in the 2015 you have a cooperation with Mayor of Bandung, which is the project in Bandung. And as I know that Bandung is one of the cities that well developed in terms of technology, I want to know why do you choose this city instead of other countries, other cities? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the question. If I understand the question correctly, it's as technology grows and is widely disseminated, the use of that technology often eliminates jobs that are done by human beings, and therefore doesn't that have a negative effect on employment? There are a lot of people who are actually studying this question, but as a general rule, the increased efficiency increases productivity and returns to actual labor. So therefore, as people work, they become more productive in whatever it is that they do. There is a shift in investment and a shift in the kind of work that different people do, but there's not a reduction in employment. In fact, I think some of the studies that were indicated earlier by the World Bank and others show that there's actually a growth return to employment directly correlated with the distribution of access to information and communications technology. And it's interesting because we see, for example, if you use mobile banking, you see your bank tellers. People don't go actually into the bank and talk to a human being to cash a check or to deposit money. So that, in a sense, reduces the number of bank tellers that you need, but it increases dramatically the number of people using banking services. It increases dramatically the number of people who come out of the informal sector and come into the formalized sector of the economy, and in turn increases the ability of government to serve those people, and also their ability to increase the amount of savings that they have, and also increase consumption. So the general perception among economists is that yes, you do see shifts in employment because of developments in technology, and you have to help those people whose jobs are, as a result of technology changes, shifted out of that particular occupation. But net overall, for general public welfare and general employment, that the net effects are positive. So again, I think you could make a correlation to open markets and trade in the same way. That as markets become open and more efficient, it creates shifts in investment and productivity, but net increases that investment productivity. Our public responsibility is to ensure that those who are negatively affected, and they do exist, that we help them through that period of transition.
Thank you. Can I have a slide? I think slide number 23. Yes, okay. So if you look at this slide, I pointed out there were 7 early adopters. The 7 that I mentioned in my slide before, I think it's probably this one here. No, sorry. So these 7 adopters, and then the second 7 is basically there you have bundle. What you mentioned. The question is, why did I choose? What did we choose? It's not my decision. In fact, there's a team that has chosen that, and there were criteria. The criteria were predominantly that this Kabupaten and the Kota were supposed to be already having an ability to use ICT. So if you can see that, just imagine we would have this pilot project in any of these cities or cosmopolitans. They would be successful in basically deciding upon what kind of application they would need and what would be feasibly applicable for their constituencies. Once they have come to terms, then we would basically promote whatever they have done, upload this to the cloud, and then others could download. Meaning to say, the better the cosmopolitan or quota are that are in the beginning involved in this, the better the trickle-down effect will be on the others. So basically, call the first 7 the pioneers because they are very capable. The second one are the early adopters. They have also some capability. Now imagine the reverse. We would work with a cosmopolitan that has no clue about how to use ICT. Well, it would be a very slow process. I mean, target is to have basically everybody in this process where group learning, dynamic group learning could happen by the end of next year. Everybody, all the 500 should be integrated then. Already we have 14, we have the target within the third quarter of this year. There will be a large meeting with all 50 of this group, and that will be, we'll have a second phase pilot project will be hopefully finished by second quarter next year, and then we'll have the remainder, basically trickle down to all the 450 plus remaining cosmopolitan quotas. So to your question is, we need cities like Bandung who are relatively capable in order to quickly lead the way and give ideas to everybody else. So by that we have this dynamic group learning process that will enable all cosmopolitans and quotas to start working into the same direction. Of course, it needs years until this is happening. This is really in place. I'd like to give an example that happened actually here in America. That was about half a year ago or 4 months ago. We had a very nice session about smart cities. I happen to be the head of Smart City Bandung, actually. So, but this is a coincidence. And basically, I was the moderator then, and I was moderating 2 mayors, the mayor of Bandung, the mayor of Banda Aceh, a lady, and the head of Bandung Wangi Kabupaten in East Java. They were all presenting what kind of ICT applications they would use in order to work with their constituencies. During the discussions, the lady, the mayor from Mr. Ilham, I think, from Banda Aceh, she presented the very nice apps, how to basically monitor the civil servants, how productive they were, where they were, what they do. You can really monitor all the civil servants. And in this discussion, the mayor of Bandung said, hey, what this apps do? I want to use it in Bandung. And you can see there's a lot of things that people have an idea in one kabupaten or kota, and other people can do the same thing. They don't have to start from scratch. They would basically start with what is available already, maybe improve it, maybe add this or that, but in basic, they don't have to reinvent the wheel, and that is what we are trying to do this. So again, early adopters, kabupaten and kota already have the capability, are predestined to lead the way, but other will follow better if there is somebody who can also do a lot of work before they will start. I think that's the reason.
Thank you, Ilham. And the third question?
Hi, Andy Cabo. As most of you know, I've been in this country for 25 years. I came here in telecommunications. The buzzwords in 1990 when I came here were connectivity. 25 years later, I'm retired, and the buzzwords are still connectivity. And quite frankly, if I look back at why a good deal of that is still an issue, is because of government. This government and past governments have focused on being in control and regulating, not enabling. I think, Ilham, if you can really do a deliverance to this country, turn that paradigm around to the point where government enables and then gets the heck out of the way. The other point I'd like to raise, and it goes along with and by the way, Ibu Shinto had an excellent slide there with about 5 or 6 takeaways of where government could start enabling. And it would be good to take that back to your folks at ComInfo and industry and other ministries. The other one I'd like to point out, today in this country, we import upwards of 95% of all software that's used in this country across all fields. We have an opportunity, one more opportunity, to get ahead of the curve. We have brain power in this country that's second to none. Let's start enabling that brain power to start producing, if we have applications that are aspirational to Indonesians, why aren't they aspirational to folks outside of Indonesia? Why can't we turn that paradigm around to start exporting our brain power through applications? Today, the government is not focusing at all on taking advantage of that opportunity. If we don't start doing something now, we'll miss that boat as well. Just an observation for you, sir.
You want to have a comment on it?
I basically completely agree with what Pa Andi said. I think, unfortunately, our country is not so export-oriented in general. I think this is probably because of the fact that we are a very large country, and many large countries are, by the very nature of things, they rely predominantly on the internal economy. And so, but having said that, the things that we export is more the things that we have rather than the things we create. And that is part of the transition we want to achieve with using ICT. One of the slides that I showed was changing the economy into what is knowledge and innovation based. From what? From what we are today, that is basically asset based. We export what we have rather than export what we create. And that is, I think, the target of all of us. But for that, we need to make our country and our people smarter. And for that, we have ICT. And that's what we might take.
Thank you, Pa Ilham. We still have 5 minutes. And I think I need not 3 now, but only 2. So I guys on the back, and also the second is there. Thank
you. Thank you. My name is Hari Samputra Agus. I'm from India, Kabarindo and Global Review. I'm concerned about innovation and creativity keeping rolling. What I mean is, we know that long time ago, Microsoft, in 1980s, from centralized to decentralized. And now, like in school, we cannot tend to do what the student wants or student. We have to give examples. It means that everyone can be examples. Everyone can be centralized. Everyone can be decentralized. Creativity. What I mean is, we don't have to talk about just competency or timely or solution. Beyond that Shinto mentioned that all the generation, the leaders now is still analog. That how we change this situation? How? And I want to ask Mr. Ilham, from big libraries to fingertips, and fingertips going to big library again, it's okay. It means depends on the leader. Thank you.
It's a hard question. How to change analog to digital?
Well, I think one keyword was already mentioned by the gentleman. I think it's about the leaders, right? And I think the leaders always reflect also the population or the people that elect the leader, right? So people elect the person that they understand, that they connect with, they can see themselves somehow in the leader. And if you look at our president right now, yes, he mentioned all the keywords. I mean, we are fully focused on e-health, e-education, logistics, e-procurement, e-government, everything is there. Everything is here already. I think the understanding is there. What I sometimes see is the lack of implementation, maybe. It needs time, and it's not easy. The leader is important, but the ability to implement is also important. And also, as you also mentioned, it's not only one person, it's many leaders. I mean, there's a leader in every sector, and he or she needs to be convinced. I see more and more people of that generation that is not only understanding, but also using and fully embracing digital culture. It's not only technology, it's a lot of things that are basically a consequence of that, like